Yeah, isn't that cool?
Water. It's water.
It's a water parade.
We're ready. Are you ready? Okay.
Okay. So we get a thumbs up when,
Yeah, I'll get a message.
okay, good. So that little screen at the bottom right, I guess, is what people online will be seeing.
Are we good to go?
I'm good.
Okay.
Making sure.
Don't forget Aaron's on.
Yes, we're live.
We're good?
Yes.
Okay.
And you may want to announce that we can a member joining virtually.
Okay.
The consultant, not a member.
So let me welcome everyone. We have made a change to the agenda. Was for town clerk's suggestion, I think it's a good one. We are going to hold off on approving the meeting minutes from our, says March 27th. I think it was actually March 7th, wasn't it?
Yeah, March 7th.
From our March 7th regular meeting until our next regular meeting, which is June 16th. Makes sense. So we'll just wait on that. And so our main reason for being here today, and I guess I should start by asking those who are not here to identify themselves. Let's just go around the room, introduce ourselves, and I'm going to start with Aaron because he is joining us by way of Zoom. So Aaron, just testing to make sure that you're able to hear us and to we're able to hear you. Would you like to give yourself a brief introduction?
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Aaron Sorrell with Community Planning Insights. I'm signing in from Central Nebraska, so I hope everybody is well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Aaron. Good to have you with us. I'm going to start with Michael, and we'll go around the room and introduce ourselves.
Michael Enzelmeyer, Senior Housing Specialist, Town of Apex Community Development.
And note taker. Thank you for doing it.
That's right.
Demetria John, Assistant Town Manager.
Seth Friedman, CEO of Passage Homes.
Paul Kane, CEO for the Home Builders Association of Raleigh-Wake County. And Aaron, I've been to Central Nebraska. Behave yourself.
Bill Welch, Chair of this august body.
Rhett Fussell with the Raleigh Area Land Trust.
Molly Rogers, committee member.
Diane Kim, Planning Director for the Town of Apex.
And Shannon Cox, Long Range Planning Manager with the town.
Okay, thank you. So we are expecting Mayor Pro Tem Audra Killingsworth momentarily, but we were told we can go ahead. And so we are going to do that. Oh, we can, there we can see Aaron. Okay, so the old business item that we have on the agenda today is the review and discussion of the draft affordable housing incentive zoning policy. Everyone should have gotten a copy of it. I had a few comments that I sent around to everyone, but let me just invite other comments. Aaron, why don't I start with you? You had a hand at putting together these revisions. Do you have any comments on how it landed up?
So I think we have a good policy to move forward with. I do have a presentation if you'd like to just go over to highlight the changes from the previous discussion we had to the policy that was sent out to you. If you'd like me to go over the high level highlights of that.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful since it's been a couple months since we've met. Why don't you go ahead and do that?
Okay, so all right, so you see a PowerPoint presentation?
I do. Yeah, good.
Okay, great. So the revision since the last meeting, we edited the policy to be more succinct, removed unnecessary duplication of tables, and then also policy restatements. So I think it flows a little bit better and it's just easier to comprehend. We updated the AMI thresholds and the affordability terms based on our last HAB meeting discussion. So the maximum AMI threshold for ownership is 135% with a minimum 20-year affordability period. And then for rental products, the maximum AMI is up to 100% based on household size, negotiate, and then the the minimum affordable period is negotiable based on the income targeting. So the deeper the income targeting, the shorter the possible affordability period. But again, negotiable based on the size of the project, the scope, who is targeting. Also updated the financial incentive requirements to be consistent with North Carolina statutes 157-3 and 157-9.4. That's on page 10 and 11. There was some restrictive language that was in there in the draft policy that was not in state law. So we removed that, and essentially what we're reiterating in the policy nearly mirrors state law. If the town were to directly provide cash incentives to the developer or home buyer or renter. On the appendix, which were examples of how to calculate ownership sales prices. So I updated the example calculations based on revised AMI percentages and the current interest rates. One thing to note, I don't think we really talked about this much as far as policy, but for setting the sales price for ownership product, there are two variables here. The sales price is based on a 1-to-1 household size ratio to bedrooms. So a 4-bedroom house, the price would be set based on the based on the theoretical household size of 4 persons. That's a buyer friendly approach. Some inclusionary housing policies use a 1.5 ratio. So 1.5 persons per bedroom. That leads to a higher potential sales price. So I think, and what I'm recommending is that we start this policy out at a 1-to-1 ratio. Secondly, the sales price, when maximum sales prices are calculated for housing policies such as this, it is very typical to set the maximum threshold 10% less than, or the target price 10% less than the maximum threshold. So if we are targeting, for example, a maximum sales price, an incentive that, or a home that would be occupied by a home buyer that's no more than 130% AMI, then the initial sales price is typically set at a price that's affordable to a household at 125% AMI. That's done for 2 reasons. One, it increases the pool of potential buyers, and so the benefits the developer because there'll be less time on market. If you set the sales price at the maximum affordability, then you really do limit the number of buyers that are potentially eligible. Secondly, it also helps ensure affordable monthly payments for that household. So here's some examples. So in the policy in Appendix B, if we are targeting an 80% AMI household for ownership, and it's a 4-bedroom home, then it's calculated based on the median income. So the calculation is 0.3. So because we're trying to limit 30% of household expenditures. The 0.7 is the 70% of the 100% AMI. So 113,330 is the 100% AMI level for a family or a household size of 4. So if we're targeting, the maximum threshold is 80%, we want to set the price at 10% or an AMI threshold of 0.7, which do the math, it ends up a maximum monthly affordable housing cost of right around $1,900 a month. Same calculation for 100% AMI. You can see in there that the 0.9 is the discount. So 90% AMI, and at 135%, we are scaling up from the median income. So the multiplier is 1.25. So 125% AMI, and you can see the respective monthly affordable housing costs. So then we back
So, Aaron,
into.
Can we,
Yeah.
Aaron, I'm sorry, can we ask questions as you go through?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I have a really simple question. You just put up a calculation for 80% of AMI. That is not in the document that I have.
That's in the appendix.
So it would be on page 14 is where this starts.
Yeah.
Yep.
That document right there is the red line version from our last meeting.
Okay,
Did you say that was the,
This isn't the one that was sent out.
right, that wasn't the red line version. The actual document that was sent out doesn't include the right information.
The one that was sent by email, I think is the right one.
Right.
This is,
That's the one that Aaron's going.
Right, that's the one that he's going over now.
Yeah.
And so
So
that's the one that he's going over now.
So this is an old document, because this says 1.2,
Right.
not 1.35.
That was sent out. Yeah, that copy was given to you all at the last meeting, the
well,
red line
I
version.
mean, I thought I took this off of what Alan sent around as being the most up-to-date copy. See, this kind of underscores something that I've been kind of running on about, is that we need some kind of version control so that we know
Right.
what version we're looking at, because just looking at page numbers doesn't quite do it. So,
And this thing has gone through many, many iterations.
well, that's true. Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's,
you had mentioned it, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad to see that the 80% calculation is in there, and looking forward to looking at the current document that has that.
The one they emailed has the numbers. And
Yeah.
the one that was printed and given to us today does
Right.
not.
Put it aside.
Right.
I don't know why we were given that. This is no
Right.
longer relevant.
That's right.
So here is I just brought up the document that was emailed out. I changed the formulas slightly to make it clearer, just to make the math more obvious on how it works. So all of the median income limits that are listed as the example is the 100% AMI for a household size of 4. So for 80% AMI, it's a 0.7 or a 70. We're targeting at 70% of 113,000. If you go to 135, again, we're setting the sales price affordable for somebody at 125% AMI. So it's an escalation of 1.25.
To that, why did we choose a 10 basis point decrease for each of them? Is there a rationale?
That's in inclusionary housing policies. That's just kind of the standard practice.
So if someone is making 80%, are still charged essentially affordable at 70%.
So the sales price is set at that, yeah, because if you set the sales price affordable to at 135% AMI, you really limit the number of the buyers that can afford that, or they're coming with a significant down payment. So by setting the initial sales price lower, it broadens the pool of potential buyers, and then also helps with that affordability, because there are variables when you're buying a house that, stuff comes up, and it provides just a little bit more of a cushion.
I'd like to add, we need to make the 10% discount that you're adding here is not in this at all. There's nothing in the table that shows that you're discounting by. So if someone that wasn't at this committee meeting went to this and said 80%, well, then why are you multiplying by 70? It would be very confusing. So I think we need to specifically call out
Yeah.
that this is why we're doing this. So it's back to Seth's point. And I think even for protection, no one's going to go back in the future and listen to this presentation, right? So we should say exactly what you already said, Aaron, and this is why we did this, which I think is what Seth is getting to.
Call
So I think we need
Like
to
asterisks.
spell it out because we'll probably forget it if you weren't here, Aaron. I mean, so
Okay.
I think we need to make sure that it's in there.
I will add a paragraph.
Okay.
And then the next, so going down is basically just the examples of backing into the calculation of how to set the sales price. So there are all of the various factors that go into a monthly payment, from the amount of down payment that the individual brings. And so these are assumptions, and they will change based on, every case is different, but these are all of the variables that go into setting that initial price. And so we're basically backing in to a price based on, so this is their monthly cost that they can afford, $19.82 for 80% AMI. And so we just back into where we get to a payment that's close to affordable, and you end up with a target sales price of $211,000. If there's no HOA dues, that sales price can go up. If interest rates go down, which is a big factor here, that sales price will rise. So it all depends, but there is a spreadsheet that goes along with a sort of a quick and easy way to back into the sales price. And then we show examples at 100% AMI, and then also 135.
So Aaron, I think Paul may have had a question about where the cost to the developer comes into the equation here.
Yeah, I mean, this does a very good job of calculating out what is affordable to a purchaser, but there doesn't seem to be anything that takes into consideration market forces or costs of construction or anything like that. And I know you're using as kind of a starting benchmark for a lot of this stuff, inclusionary zoning practices. But, since this is not a standard inclusionary zoning thing, since that's not lawful in North Carolina, this is an incentive zoning where it's based on incentivizing a builder to voluntarily go along with this versus mandating that the builder do this by virtue of law. I wonder if we ought to take a slightly different approach and take those considerations into account.
So the way I envision this working is that comes into account at the very front end, where the builder has an idea of what they want to build. They know what the costs are going to be. And then the incentives are crafted around what it takes to get to that number.
Okay. I mean, I can tell you that in the past couple of years has taught us that a builder may think they know what it's going to cost at the front end, and it turns out to be a very, very different story by the time it's done. And I mention this because looking at this through the eyes of a developer and or builder, that kind of chisels away at some of the incentivizing element of this.
The alternative is to your point of this is a voluntary, is to set a suggested sales price. But at the end of the day, in order for the unit to count, they need to have a buyer that meets that income threshold. So whether you call this a suggested the MSRP for in car speak, and it ends up being.
I seem to recall there was another part, and I can't tell you exactly where it was, but I thought there was some language in this that talk about that the affordable units, a certain percentage below the other units in the project. Am I remembering right?
There is, and it's really based on the appraised value. So let me go up to that. So it's a bit on page here. Yeah, so it's based on kind of whether or not the
I found it.
yeah,
It's on page 6.
correct, 6 and 7, and
Under,
it flows over.
Yeah, on in the middle of page 6.
Yeah.
To receive
So the
credit
idea
towards-
that the initial sales price would be set 10% below the market. That probably works for a higher number of higher bedrooms, but this would work as well if somebody's bringing a large down payment to the project as well.
Just kind of confusing.
And do these prices take any closing costs into consideration?
They do. Well, it takes into account, PMI, kind of the ongoing cost, doesn't take into account realtor, buyer, realtor fees, transaction fees, title binding, all of those things that add up at the closing, which is another reason to set that target about 10% lower.
And that's a great reason to put that asterisk in there and define why we're doing 10% lower. But just a quick, something I talked about in the previous couple of meetings is trying to understand the value of the incentives we're providing. And the reason I'm saying that is because I just did a quick search on Zillow. There is technically one house that's below $400,000 available in Apex right now. So if we're selling at 100% AMI for $292, are these incentives going to be worth $108,000 to the developer? To Paul's point, say, hey, you know what? Let me do it. My guess is no. So are we putting forth a reasonable proposal for people to actually take advantage of the incentives, or are we just doing something to make ourselves feel good? I hate to put it that way, but that's kind of where we are in housing.
Well, so I 100% agree with you, Seth, and I brought this up to Phil and Paul before the meeting. When I read through this incentive policy, there is no detail to one, guide staff, which maybe that's kind of what we want to ask. But the bigger piece for me was there's nothing in here that guides the direction of that one. There's nothing that helps someone on the development side to look at this when they come in and say, I have an acre and I can currently put 16 units on it. If I want to provide affordable housing, I'm going to get extra density bonuses. I'll have less sidewalk, all that stuff, right? But there's nothing in there for them to look at it and be like, oh, you know what? If I do X, Y, and Z, in general, I'm going to get 20 more units on this piece of land, right? So they have no idea if the cost will even work, one, if the incentive is even something they want to consider. And I think that, for me, it makes it really hard, thinking at it from both perspectives. Back to Seth's point, are we just putting together a policy that has no real sort of depth and meaning to it? I guess is my question, because I don't see how someone could, on the developer side, could use it to, without coming to staff and then trying to spend 3 or 4 months figuring it out, because that's what it's going to take, right? And so that's my question is, are we kind of setting ourselves up that way? And maybe I'm the only person that feels that way. No, it sounds like Seth also does.
Diane wants to say something.
Please. We've been doing this. It works. They are very smart people. They get their pro formas out. They sit and do the math. They figure it out. They talk with us. Hey, we can't do this because of this, and this is this, and this is that. And we have these conversations, and it does go on for months, but the pre-application period takes a bit of time regardless for all of the zoning conditions we do.
Sure.
And so I think it's been working.
Okay.
Because we've had lots of proffers on projects, almost every one. And on the few where it hasn't really penciled out. They've come up with really unique things like, well, I have this one neighborhood with $1 million homes, but I have another neighborhood that I'm willing to sell to Habitat for Humanity. Okay, great. So I just want to say, I think it's been working. Been working.
But should it be in the document itself, that
Right, that-
explanation?
I don't think it can be
Yeah.
prescriptive. I don't think it has to
Right,
be every
right.
detail, but I think,
I think that's what it's.
I think there's gotta be some level of what that might mean. Maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, if you say it's working, then, you know, that's on staff. But I feel like maybe from Paul's perspective, if I'll put myself in your shoes, I would have a hard time figuring out, well, what is my true incentive for doing that, I guess.
Well, you say that this has already been going on. What, if there wasn't this structure in place, kind of what was the context under which all those were done?
We've been sharing this policy with everybody. They've
been
already
sharing
been
drafts.
looking at it.
Okay.
So has it been working on paper or working in reality?
We've got lots of projects that I don't know at the any are on the ground just because of how long development takes to come out, but we haven't had anyone.
Interest.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay.
We've not, development hasn't slowed down at all. We've got projects every single month that are talking with Michael and working through what they believe they can proffer. And right now, they're not really getting any of the incentives back. They're just offering the stuff. They're not getting, oh, you can have higher density or less sidewalk. They're not getting any of that. I think they would like this to be adopted so they can start getting some of the incentive part of it instead of just the proffer part of it.
So what's been like agreed upon in terms of affordable housing? Like what has actually been accepted looks to move forward, even if it's not on the ground, but has plans and documents signed, whatever?
Michael, you've got your spreadsheet, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have a variety of projects, both rental and ownership, that the developer has committed affordable units as conditions, in their rezoning application. So the process is working.
And why are they doing that? I guess is the question.
We're simply just making
wanna
the
build here.
recommendation.
Well, I mean,
It's one of the top priorities of the council, and it's like any other priority in past years from the council. There used to be other conditions that folks would look at, and so it's,
I think the $1 million question is going to be right now, for example, if they're offering 5% of the total number of units that they're doing, if they're offering that, and how many units there are. If we want a developer to offer more affordable housing, which is where we're trying to get to, how will we do that without requiring them to do that? Because we can't do that. We can't require them to build as many as we want them to build based on that need. But what kind of incentive are we going to give them to build more? Right now, we may get 2 units out of 100 units. Is that enough? It may be enough today, but it's not going to be enough tomorrow. And so how are we going to bring that incentive to life on paper within this?
And that's essentially my question.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell me
you have to road test.
what that incentive is.
I've said this from the beginning, and I feel like I've said this a bunch of times. We need to road test it. We need you to adopt it so we can put it out there and go, this is actually what it is. Can you guys make this work? And we'll get all kinds of great feedback for y'all. They'll come back and say, this doesn't work, this works. This would work if you changed it in this way. Until we get it out there, like it's just.
but it sounds like you've already been doing something.
Some of it, but they don't have the actual.
Right.
We
But-
can't, we can't necessarily offer those specific things.
So what is their motivation to do it now before these incentives are? in
They want
place?
to
Yeah,
develop an
Apex.
apex.
Everybody wants to build an apex.
If they didn't want to
today.
build here, they would have already moved on.
So is the intimation that their project won't be approved unless they do
No,
that?
because there's been projects approved without it, but on the whole, it has to be a project that's approvable.
But the bottom line is, if we want more affordable units in the different projects that are coming into Apex, how are we going to incentivize that project? I think that's the question.
When we very first started this, we did is that wrong? When we very first started this, we did a survey of builders and, got some feedback and such. And, you know, there's been a lot of work and discussion done on this since then. And I mean, I'm not going to suggest we resurvey because that's a whole lot of work, but I could probably, you know, have a couple of my builders look at this and say, does this make sense to you? You know, can you provide a pro forma and what, you know, just kind of get the feedback on it.
But
Because honestly, I
I
don't.
think what Diane is saying is that they're doing some of it now.
Okay.
And if we adopt it, then they can put it in place and road test it, as you said, and get the feedback from actual developers that are coming to Apex to build here. I think that's really more the feedback that I want to hear.
Okay.
I mean, I just brought up a question and it sounds like the process is working and that's reaffirming, right? I mean, I still don't know that that's where it needs to head, but that's not my choice. So, you know, I've said my piece.
Well, and the only reason I bring these things up is, you know, I want to make sure that the incentives are incentivizing, right? And that if it's going to motivate builders and developers to do this, that when they look at this, they say, yeah, I want that. I want those goodies. And in order to get those goodies, I'll give you some affordable housing.
Some more.
I just want to make sure,
Right.
I just want to make sure the goodies are tasty enough.
And what we're saying is we want to incentivize getting more affordable housing.
Sure.
Not just developing housing. We want to incentivize more affordable housing. And how do we get from 2 to 10? How do we get from 10 to 20 based on that need? That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is, I mean, this gives you the incentives, right? That you can work with, but there's nothing in here that says, you know, and again, it doesn't have to be exact, but like, if you can provide units at 100% AMI, you're going to get more incentive. And those incentives are blah, 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 whatever that is, right? I mean, that's essentially what Michael is negotiating, I'm assuming at this point in time, but there's nothing clear.
Would be, right? We've got in the appendix examples of what things would cost the buyer. Would it help if we had examples of what this would look like for the builders, since the builders are actually going to be the ones studying this?
Maybe so. I mean, it may not be an issue. I mean, I'm just bringing it up because I thought when I read it, I was like, okay, how would I interpret this? And I can't.
Well, it sounds like Michael has spreadsheets that would help answer that question. Don't you have pro formas that really reflect the builder side of things?
I haven't really been that involved with it. I'm tracking how many units we're getting based on each project that's going. through
Okay,
the rezone.
okay. I think the previous housing program manager did do that.
Did what?
He did have pro formas based on actual developer information that he brought to town council meetings.
I'm unaware of it if he did.
Well, it was before your time. And, you know, the planners could back me up on that, right? Didn't CJ come to some of the council meetings?
I'm not sure he had full pro formas, although, I mean, he did show some, he did typically provide some slides that showed, you know, what was being offered and any incentives requested. And I know that he did have one-on-one meetings with the developers and talk through some pro formas, but I'm not sure that we have those examples.
I don't believe they give us that, because once they give us their pro forma, it's public record, so they're not going to be giving us pro formas.
I wasn't saying that. I was saying that CJ was coming up with pro formas that would give kind of a builder perspective on their costs and so forth. And well, okay.
So,
I recall what you're talking about. At one of the very first meetings, he had some sort of pro forma. I don't think it was based on any real-time numbers of local projects. Because I'd had a builder look at that and said that those numbers were not
Realistic.
realistic.
Okay.
So, and I just wanted to bring up one thing, because we did discuss some of this the last meeting as far as, you know, levels of incentives. And I think where we ended up, so I just want to bring it back up as a reminder, is allowing flexibility
Sure.
for the process, because depending on the context of different zoning cases that come forward, the incentives might be very different. And so that's why it's always kind of been, there's a menu and Michael and the planner will work with each zoning case on what works best for them. So I think having that flexibility could also be an advantage for developers.
I may be wrong, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I don't think it was a question about the flexibility so much as it was the understandability. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I read this from a perspective of just coming in blind, I would not know what I'm going to get for my incentives. Just coming, if I moved here and I'm going to develop in this region, if I looked at this, I would not know that if I provide, I know I've got to get 5%. That's basically the only thing that I can tell from this, that I've got to get is 5% of the units that I'm going to build at a minimum. And if I want to have more density, less sidewalks, all that less parking and all that, I would have no concept of what is potentially available to me, I guess is my point. Because from reading this, it just generalizes saying you're going to get a density bonus. Don't know what that density bonus is going to be, but you're going to get it at some level. I guess that's my point.
I think the idea is to allow them flexibility to let us know what they need from us.
The builders, them as being the builders.
Yeah, it's a menu. They order from the menu. We don't tell them if you order a hot dog, you're only getting French fries. They order from menu. They pick out what they would like to say. All right, I'd really like some more density. I don't care about the RCA thing.
But I think one of the challenges of being extremely prescriptive in, if you do this, you're going to get this. If you're going to do A, you're going to get B, B, C, is that eliminates the context of where the development takes place, and not every incentive is appropriate at every area. And so having the flexibility allows the developer, the planner, the housing specialist to take the development one as a whole and then also in the context of the area in which it's being developed, and then craft the appropriate incentives rather than laying out expectations that if you do X, you're going to get Y, because Y might not be appropriate in this particular area of town.
So you mentioned that it's already working. One, this is not already in place, so something is working. It's not this. Right. But I would really like to know how many affordable units, rental and home ownership, and what percentage of those new approved projects are there, and what AMI are they targeting, right? And so there's a lot of information that's still unclear about what's happening at this level. And to compare, if we want to actually do a true comparison of, let's road test this. Okay, great, we road test this for a year. What was approved before this? What was approved after? Right? A true comparison, see, was it just more of the same, or did this actually incentivize? And then I know we don't want to be prescriptive, but I think the more clear we can be about the possibilities gives you an advantage within the region, because Raleigh's doing something similar, Cary's going to try something similar. And so if you have an out-of-town developer that wants to come in and wants to invest in one of these 2 or 3 communities, maybe a clear incentive policy will lure them here instead of to another area of the region, Clayton, wherever it might be.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily convinced of that, honestly. I mean, Diana Shannon can speak to that, but I think developers decide what kind of market they're going after, and then they decide whether Apex is a market that they want to go after. I don't think they look at a whole area.
But are they going over the Apex market, or are they going over the triangle market?
I think it depends.
And for the most part, they're going where they can find land.
That's true too.
Well, again, I just wondered if it would be helpful to have a example of a hypothetical, 100 unit neighborhood, 100 house neighborhood, let's just say. And I know it's gonna be different for single family detached houses, it would be for townhomes, would be for apartments and so forth. But just to kind of show how this would work in a hypothetical 100 unit neighborhood, and say, so the builder can understand what it looks like.
Okay, so can planning staff and the housing staff take a look at that? Is that gonna hold up our approval of the document?
I think he's talking about seeing it. Showing them how those policies.
I think we've spent enough time on the document, honestly.
This is the first and only meeting we've talked about it.
You mean about this particular version?
Yeah, well, no, I mean,
The
we have not
changes.
really, I remember specifically a meeting where I asked if we were gonna get into the details of this, and I was told that that was beyond the purview of this committee, and it wasn't until the meeting before this that we agreed we were gonna do it, and this is the meeting we're doing it at.
Right.
This committee has never dove into this document.
This was the purpose of this meeting,
Right.
was for you all to have the opportunity to, talk about that, but also to making sure you all got the document in time to look through it. So that you can come to this meeting, where we won't spend 2 or 3 hours, discussing it, but bringing your comments and your questions based on
Okay,
Aaron's.
so we're opening up the document to possible changes. And so the question is, do we want to take a look at what Paul just suggested in terms of 100-unit development from a developer perspective? That's what I heard you say.
I mean, my thinking is, if this is supposed to be, if we're trying to entice builders and developers to do this, kind of make it easy for them to say yes.
Honestly, to Diane's point, we can do both, right? We can start road testing it, but set a really hard stop, saying the next, let's say September 1, we'll have this ready to go, right? Like, so I think what we're happening is we keep pushing everything down the road, kind of 2 separate paths to get it to a better version while moving forward. But we need to set a hard timeline with like concrete and make sure we're getting the right versions back and forth.
And wouldn't this be a flexible document to make the changes as this grows, So if, you want to talk about it some more based on the road test, the information that's being brought back to, to the members, then we could talk about making those changes based on that, if everybody has a consensus. But just because if you vote on it today to move forward, doesn't mean that this is concrete, that it's not going to change.
I mean, I understand
That
that
makes
things can change, but if we feel like we still have questions and revisions, why get an approval ahead of the final product? Just because we're in a hurry?
So I think what we need at this point is a list of the things that might be revisions to this document. And that's one that I'm hearing. And Aaron, I wanted to ask you a question about, and I'm at a disadvantage now because apparently I don't have the most current document, which frustration to me, honestly.
Does anybody have the printed more current document with them?
I do.
So the most recent changes were sent in the attachments, in the email, but they were not printed. That document was not printed for you today, but if you would like that, I can get that.
I think that's what you said. Yeah, look
That
at
that
one
might
as
be
you speak
helpful.
about it.
That's what we're talking about at this point.
You have it all.
I can print a version for you,
This-
just a printed copy still.
So the one they printed and put on our desk is not the new response.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no, I mean,
Yeah.
they're not gonna. So does everyone want a new printed copy?
No, I have.
How many new
Raise your
printed
hand if
copies?
you want. a
I'm
printed
okay without a printed copy.
Yeah.
I've got
I would
mine.
like a printed copy.
1, 2.
You have the other one, I'm collecting the
I've
one.
got the new one.
I have mine.
One's
Okay. You don't have a wrong one under your.
Okay, this is
You only read, you
Oh, I thought
were
I-
looking at it from your
I
computer.
have two.
Okay,
I have-
you have a
I have
copy.
the right version.
Paul has it.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. I just want to.
That has it. So you just need.
I'm just collecting. the ones that are-
Yes.
Then
Yeah.
you can recycle these.
So Shannon, one copy.
I hear 2.
Okay, two.
I
Sorry.
need one that the corrections are not showing up on the one that I'm looking at, so.
So on the latest one, on table 1, which I do not have the latest copy yet. But on the copy I'm looking at, it says ownership, the the minimum affordability term. It says ownership negotiable based on income targeting, which is a contradiction to what's later on in the document where it says 20%, or sorry, 20 years affordable interval.
Yeah, that's been changed, and so ownership is 20 years minimum.
Okay, all right, so that table has been changed.
Correct.
Okay, but the rental is still negotiable.
Correct.
Aaron, we kind of jumped in. Did you have more to present?
We took it off the rails. We get that.
Yeah,
We're used to that.
no, I mean, I was hitting the highlights of what had changed, and so, yeah, I covered it. I think, well, yeah, so, never mind.
So I have another question that relates back to the letter that you sent to Demetria back on, I think it was February 23rd. Where you went off and you looked at some of the starting salaries and, experienced public servants like firemen and police officers and administrative support specialists, water, sewer, field workers. And you came up with a recommendation that we followed the last time on March 7th to lower the maximum threshold of AMI for the rental units to 100% from 120.
Correct.
And then you also had a recommendation to lower the threshold for the ownership units from 150 to 120. And I believe that you presented that in our last meeting. Am I correct about that?
That's correct, but the discussion during the meeting, we settled at 135.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So, and I do remember that, but it was contrary to your recommendation on February 23rd.
Right, which was discussed in the.
Yeah, we split the baby on that. So, and I'm comfortable with 135.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with it, but that's okay.
And I think that was brought up in that last meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess we're kind of getting into some questions. And this is a little thing, but I don't understand. There was some language that was deleted in 2.1 on the pre-application meeting. And I don't honestly know which version of it had this language because I've kept every version that I've had since this started, and there's several. But that used to end with regarding all aspects of the proposed development and affordable housing incentive. And it used to end with, if the applicant chooses to submit an AHP, which I kind of like that language because it underscored the fact that this is a voluntary thing. And at some point in the updating of this, that last part was deleted and I didn't know why.
I think that, I guess in my mind, if it's understood that they're going to submit an application if they want to move forward, and if they don't submit an application, they're not moving forward. So I felt that was kind of redundant, but if you want to put that in, we can put that back.
So I think, Paul, your point is that at the pre-application meeting, that decision may not have been made yet by the developer. Is that your point?
I guess it makes it sound like they have to submit that application whether they are choosing to follow this program or not.
So the idea is that they meet with staff in the pre-application meeting, and then they go over, as this may be one or two meetings, that the developer then goes back or goes and sits down in more detail with the staff to go over what the incentives are, how it might be applied for this particular development. And then the applicant puts forward the actual affordable housing proposal. So after they've talked about what the menu of options are and how that might relate to the project, the developer is going to have to go back and pencil out what's more valuable to them. And then they submit the application with the requested, menu items, because they need to your point originally, they're going to have to figure out which works best for them based on their cost structure, the land cost, the utility cost, et cetera. So there are going to be some upfront meetings. Then they'll come back and submit the actual proposal with that request after they've figured out what works best for them.
Yeah, I was just saying that the language that was deleted, I thought was good because it underscored the voluntary nature of this program.
Okay, well, we can certainly add that back.
Paul, if you look at step 2, it says this step will provide the applicant with the information needed for drafting and submitting the affordable housing plan concurrently with the conditional zoning application. And so my interpretation is if they proceed down this path, step 2, step 3, and so forth, they're into the affordable housing plan.
Oh, no, that's absolutely right. But I'm just saying that the very first step, it should be very clear that this is voluntary.
Okay, all right.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I think it's easy just to add back in.
Okay, all right.
Yep, that's an easy add.
I didn't see the harm in it.
Diane, did you?
No, I was agreeing with them.
Yeah.
I mean, if the developer says, hey, we're not doing affordable housing, none of your incentives are good enough, we're not doing it, I think that's valuable information for
Sure.
this group to have. I mean, we haven't had too many so far that have said they can't do any, but there's been a couple. And so it's good to know what, they're not even participating at all in this.
The another question I had is on 2.5 on the restrictive covenant. Should we have some language in there that addresses, there's going to be instances where the lender is not going to want that restrictive covenant recorded. Especially for land developers, they're very controlling over the conditions of their loan and what can be in the title. In fact, there's some reference to that in 3.4 that talks about in situations where the mortgage or other program regulations prohibit a recorded restrictive covenant, other instruments that preserve the affordability will be utilized. I wondered if we ought to make that clearer. It's not addressed at all in 2.5, and reading that in isolation could lead somebody to believe that they're going to have to choose between violating their lender's requirements and violating the town requirements. And they don't want to do either.
Yeah, I'll add something back. I'll add something in there about the flexible nature of, because we're going to be depending on the instrument that is used, we're going to be subservient to the primary lender. If there are federal funds, if this is a tax credit project, we're 5 deep in the restrictive covenant priority. So I can add something to that.
That was just something somebody had pointed out to me some time ago, that those a lot of the regulations get pretty particular about what can be filed of record.
And I only have one other question. And that is, in the process that's detailed here, is this board a part of any of that process? If the answer is no, that's may or may not be acceptable, but I'm just asking because I know in other places that this board has some level of understanding of what's going on, right? And the offerings that are going on. So that is my question. It's not outlined here, so I'm just curious. And maybe there's.
You mean as far as it's for your information?
Either
Or
that
being
or is there-
updated.
non-approval is not the right word. That's not what I want
Right.
to use, right? But it oversight, I guess, right? So, is there any sort of oversight to this board? And if there isn't, that's fine. But I
How the
just,
UDO reads is that you all set policy, but in order for you to reevaluate this policy on actual road tested projects, there's going to need to be a feedback loop of this is what we're getting, this is what we're hearing. And so you all meet quarterly. And so I think every quarterly meeting, there would be an update. This is what we've got going.
And in my last meeting, our last meeting with Phil, that was one of the that we talked about, adding a permanent agenda item,
okay,
for each quarter, whether there's something to update or not, it would be on the agenda where we would bring updates to how those projects are going so that you can best make these decisions and advise council or planning board, however.
that's perfect.
Okay.
That helps me. I'm
So
just
we
trying to
did
figure out,
discuss
like,
that.
what's our role in all this? Like,
Yeah.
we've set a policy, but we don't really know what's going on.
Right.
And, hey, Michael starts from, I'm using Michael's name, Michael, but Michael starts from 100 units. And at the end of this, we got 120 units and 30 of them are affordable. Like, I just want to
How did we
understand,
get to that?
how did we get to that point?
And that would be quarterly,
Got it. Perfect.
those updates.
That works.
So I would like to take your question like one step further.
Okay.
There is a part of the planning negotiation process with the developer, environmental concerns. And I get that's policy that's been put together by the Environment Advisory Board. How are those, are you solely responsible for bringing those environmental concerns into the process?
No, so the Environmental Advisory Board doesn't have a policy. We actually, they are set up to look at every rezoning. That's not the most efficient use of their time.
The board actually does it.
They do, but it's,
Wouldn't recommend for years.
well, they've done a really good job in coming up with all the possible menu of zoning conditions, and those are included in the application for the rezoning and the PUD. So their whole laundry list is listed. It's like 10 pages long of things that they would like for developers to potentially consider. And the developers go through the list, and at every rezoning, they have a list of things that they have offered. And then reasons why they couldn't offer the other ones. And so there's not a policy, there's not an incentive, it's just a laundry list. And so some of the things, it's very low hanging fruit, it's things that developers would have done anyway, like pet waste stations. But it's in the checklist so that no one forgets. So yours will have a much broader impact the way it's set up because it actually has incentives. And at some point, they may want to make recommendations to be more like you all actually, because it's probably a better use of their time.
Right. Okay, and so there's a housing department that's in the process of being formed. Does it make sense for someone from the housing department to be on like the technical review committee or some?
That's me.
Okay, so all right, I was not aware of that, so that's good. So you basically represent the interests of the Housing Advisory Board in a sense on the technical review committee.
That's correct.
Okay. I don't know, does that need to be in this document?
Won't hurt. Or just say,
That's understood.
representative from, because if you move up and if that's no longer your role, I'm gonna say that.
You shouldn't name me personally.
Right.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Representation, from the housing department. Yeah, that would.
Yeah, okay.
Aaron, did you hear that?
Got it.
Okay.
I have a question about page 6.
Sorry, I didn't actually answer. I just realized I didn't answer the specific question you were asking. It's not Shannon. It's actually the planners, the current planners that review projects are the ones responsible for looking to see that the environmental conditions are included and doing a chart that shows in the staff report. So it's the staff that will be doing, that are the same folks that work with Michael on his stuff.
So a couple meetings ago, we talked about the fact that some of the incentives here do impact environmental aspects, right?
So the technical review committee meets staff only every month, and we sit and talk about transportation issues, environmental issues, housing issues, how they all work together, because we have to work all those things out. There's competing interests in every aspect of a land development plan.
So is what you're saying that we don't need to have the environmental advisory board review this document?
I think that's well outside their purview. They don't have.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure that we're, covering what we need to.
And so Aaron had, unless the scope has changed, part of Aaron's scope of work was to work with the environmental advisory board
Okay, yeah.
to develop a
That's what I
similar
was
policy.
remembering,
Cool.
Yeah.
And then there's a process of, how will these come together before planning
That's right.
board and town council? So
Okay.
there's several more steps.
Okay. But this needs to get to a certain state before that can be done.
That's right. Like the intent was that you guys were further ahead. This would move forward, start to be used, road tested. And that could be on a separate track, but eventually there'll be more work to do.
So on page 6, help me understand the chart a little bit better. Sorry, back somewhere else. So this is an example of, on the bottom of page 6 of 100% AMI table 4. 3-bedroom, 100% AMI, $3 to $25,000. And then the second to last column, affordable initial housing price sale percentage. That's a 5% discount, we're saying below market rate. But then at the bottom it says initial sale price, minimum 10%.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand.
Good question.
Yeah, so what this is trying to convey is that the affordable housing sales price needs to be at least 10% below the market rate sales price. I think given your market, the affordable housing, unless you're at the upper end of the 135% AMI, I think it will be substantially below or substantially less than or greater than a 10% discount, because they're in a tight housing market, and there is a looser relationship to the appraised value than there is the cost. The appraised value will probably be a lot higher than the sales price or the actual cost of the construction, because the builder is going to maximize the profit to what the market can bear, for the home ownership unit to be affordable to some of that 80, 100, or 135% AMI. That sales price is going to be significantly low. My guess is that sales price will be significantly lower than what the appraised value is.
But you're asking, Seth, the number says 5.
The number says 5% discount, but in the header, it says the minimum of 10% discount.
So, yeah.
That's to show
That's the
you that
number.
this example wouldn't be eligible for the credit.
That says no.
Gotcha.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I got it.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
There's a lot of numbers, a lot of versions.
That needs some kind of narrative below.
From what I can tell, this example's always been there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that example didn't change.
affordable house for someone at 80% AMI is $211,000 according to this document. And now we're talking about 40% discount, 30% discount. But again, I just want to make sure we're putting together a document that is
Consistent.
not consistent, that is realistic. right? I mean, yes, it's realistic that we can offer incentives for somebody that's gonna essentially sell a house half price. But what is it gonna actually do? Because we don't give any examples of what would work for an 80% house, right? We give an example of what would work for a 100% house and what would work for a 135% house. But what actual level of discount would a developer have to do at a $325,000 house to get you to afford $211,000, right? We know, what is that? 50% discount. Do you discount? And just. Again, I just don't want to, I've seen it so many times, we are developers, we're in the housing world. We say all these things in meetings that sound great. And because we want to be good humanitarians, but we're not realistic humanitarians. Right, and I just want to make sure we leave these meetings with realistic. I don't know, saying 80% AMI at a $211,000 house in this market is realistic. For sale, right? I know we're talking about.
You're really comparing this in the body of the document to the appendix, which has the 80%.
Yes, on
leading
page,
to a $211,000.
on page 16, it says the maximum affordable housing initial sale for a family of four.
Right.
Make 80% $211,000.
And that's the appendix, yeah.
Appendix 16.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, one of the things that we're not talking about, and maybe this is, discussion, is what kind of resources can be brought to the potential buyer or to the actual project. Okay, and what does that look like? That's a discussion that we haven't talked about, because we don't really know what that's going to look like yet. And that's another discussion, of course, but I think in the back of our minds, we need to be thinking about that's probably, so that 60% discount, that can be in monetary form, some kind of.
Well, so you're talking about assistance to the home buyer too, right? So
Right.
Wake County has home buyer assistance.
That's right.
APEC. So that should go into this page
Right.
16 chart, where it says, okay, maybe the home value they can actually afford is 260 because of all these, this $20,000
Right.
Wake County,
Right.
all this, because then now we're getting closer on matching those numbers.
Right.
And now for me, someone that was go, okay, maybe I can make this work instead of seeing $114,000
That's right.
difference. Like, I don't know if this incentive's worth that, perhaps.
And because the developer is not gonna know that unless he sees that, unless we talk through
That's
that.
right.
Right.
And so,
And you're just saying note it, and I think that's good,
Yeah.
right? Because I was thinking
Does
the
that
same
make
thing in the
sense,
back of
Aaron?
my mind. It's like, okay, well, there's incentives up to $75,000 or more,
Yeah.
depending upon where you are. So I
Right.
think that would help
yeah,
people understand, oh, we're not having to put that as a list price of $211 or whatever it is. It really can be listed at $290
That's right.
because we're gonna help with incentives to get it down to that. I mean, that's the point. Right?
So where would that be noted in the document?
I would
In
do
the
it on page
example?
16.
16?
I would say Wake County, so I think Wake County has like something where it's a house is less than $409,000. And get, I can't remember, 20,000, 30,000.
and it depends on the funding
Right.
that the county is using.
That's right.
That it only addresses a certain area of median income. If it's it could be a bank that's using CRA type funding that may go up above 80%. So those are the things that we need to be, that we will be talking through, that we'll probably add to this document once we further define it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
So we need to ask Aaron if it makes sense to add this to this table.
Well, yeah, to provide that example, that wouldn't hurt, Aaron, I don't think.
Or just to note that there is the potential for,
Right.
down payment assistance or subsidy,
Down
however
payment
you want to
assistance to the
phrase it,
potential.
to bring it down to a price that is X, whatever X is.
Yeah, because most developers aren't gonna be aware of all
No.
the incentives, they aren't gonna be aware, but this document is not gonna be in home buyers' hands, it's gonna be developers' hands.
That's
You
right.
want to
Yeah.
make them see that gap as small as possible.
That's
Because they're not gonna be interested if they know that they've gotta pay an additional amount of money, or if they're losing any kind of money, so they need to see that.
Okay, so Aaron, does that
Yes.
give you the direction you need?
Yeah, well, I'll add another row in there about additional down payment options or other buyer finance options, and I'll work with Michael on those that what's available in the Wake County area.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that just made me think of a question.
That's my fault.
He started it. Especially as it relates to that the affordable units must be at least 10% below the market rate initial sales price. And what's popping into my head is that most developments I've known where the developer offers a certain percentage of under market value properties, they oftentimes have to raise the value of the remaining properties to offset that loss.
Yeah.
And so are we basing that initial sales price value on the inflated price of the other units to offset that loss? Or would it be, I don't know, I guess it's creates kind of a.
Isn't that up to the developer?
Well, yeah, but I mean, typically they've got to do something to offset the loss, and optimally, hopefully, these incentives will help,
Right, right.
but probably not completely. And the reason I say Seth's comments made me think of that, because Seth was pointing out kind of the delta between the actual cost of construction versus what the buyer can afford. And if the incentives aren't enough, what they're going to do is they're going to raise the price on all of the market value stuff. So now the market value has an artificially inflated price. And is that taken into consideration at all?
Then it's a matter of whether they can sell them at the inflated price. Right?
No, but it does matter as to the others have to be at least 10% below that.
Yeah, but I think if I'm thinking of it right, if they're raising that price, then by default, it's gonna meet that 10% requirement.
Yeah, that may be true.
I mean, because if they're having to raise their price and it's 500,000 and they're selling the affordable units at 360, they've already met that, right?
Sure.
I mean, even if it does include down payment systems and things like that, right? So I think we're safe there based on the way I
Yeah, we
read it.
probably are.
Yeah. So,
It just thought popped in my head.
yeah.
Okay, does anyone else need a break? Because I would like a break right now.
Well, we only got 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
I mean, I only have 10 minutes left. We stop at 4, right?
3, 4.
Meetings-
4:30, but
Oh, is it?
There's been various.
The agenda's 4.
okay, 4 o'clock.
That's what I'm like.
Okay, well, so my favorite topic here, which I raised last time, and since we're now open to, discussing other issues in here, is the 5% for either a home, housing unit, a home, or for a lot. And I think there's a significantly different cost to the developer of those two things.
True.
And I raised last time whether that instead of being 5% for lots, whether it should be 10 or 15% to reflect that difference in cost. Because if I'm a developer, I'd say, well, okay, I'll just give you lots, but that doesn't really solve our affordable housing problem ultimately. We really need, people can't live on lots. They have to have homes that they can move into.
Where are you looking at specifically?
I'm looking specifically at page 2.
Table 1.
Table 1, because the second column there says minimum affordable housing rental ownership on-site unit / lot percentage, and that's 5%. It doesn't make any distinction between a unit, a housing unit, and what I consider to be a developable or a developed lot.
I mean, your point basically is it is easier to give a lot than it is to build a unit on that lot.
Right, and I'm afraid that's what developers are gonna do, and that's not gonna,
I understand your point. I mean,
Well,
I get it.
yes and no. I mean, if lot costs are substantial, and if they're giving a lot, okay, I mean,
So you're saying lot costs are the same as a cost of a home, which includes the cost?
no,
of
I
a
didn't
lot?
say it was the same, but I'm saying they're substantial and that,
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
I mean, I think
What's the
the
problem?
rule of thumb a lot of times is about 20% of the sale price.
20 to 25, yeah.
Yeah. and a home for sale incorporates the cost of that lot.
Yep.
So basically, if you're giving a lot and then a house is built on it, that house can conceivably be sold for 20 to 25% less than it would have been otherwise. So isn't that helping?
It is helping, but it's not the same contribution. And maybe, maybe the planning staff would take that into account. I don't know. And maybe,
Oh, yeah, a lot isn't the same as building a house, but so far Habitat has had the capacity to
Yeah.
be able to build on every, we don't have any lots that are not spoken for that I'm aware of. Because they're always,
in the pipeline.
Yeah,
development.
yeah, Habitat's picked up every single one that they've
9 in the
offered.
pipeline, so.
I don't at least, yeah.
Yeah,
And that's the
that's more
intent, is to bring in a partner.
I'll take one.
Yeah.
Not me personally.
Yeah.
Brought my one.
But yeah, if they are offering 10 lots, that's not the same proffer as 10 houses. But there are plenty of developers out there that they don't build the product that Habitat builds. They don't build without a garage. They don't build the smaller. And back in the day, builders used to build houses that are exactly like Habitat houses. My very first house in Apex was built by a custom builder. It was 1,200 square feet, no garage. That doesn't happen anymore. It's just not the reality we live in. So I think there is a benefit to having lots out there available for Habitat or White Oak. White Oak used to build houses
Yeah.
in town. There are other
Yeah.
builders out there that might be interested if they, heard that, oh, Apex is starting to generate lots that we can potentially get our houses on.
Phil, would it make you feel better if, just because I am moving towards a motion to approve this, so just FYI. Based on your saying solely that you said that it is presently working in some form or fashion, which was satisfying to me personally. But anyway, my question to you is, would it be suitable for you? I understand your point. I get the point behind it. That we use that number as is, but have some information at our meetings to better inform us and then change the policy at a later date.
At one of our quarterly meetings.
Yeah, at one of our meetings, we say, we want to offer this update, which happens all the time, right? Like UDOs and all that stuff get changed all the time. I mean, is that?
So I think we can give you updates quarterly. I don't think you should change your policy in 3 months. That's not, you're not
I
gonna.
totally agree with you.
Right.
Like once a year, right? You
Once-
make
yeah,
a
yeah.
policy change
Yes,
based on
yes,
informed decisions.
Yes.
But,
When we say flexible, we're not saying every quarter we
no,
have.
agreed. Yeah, got it, because I don't want to have to go through that.
But we'll get a report every quarter.
Agreed.
Report.
So I guess I'm offering up, could this for now work? Again, I understand your point and I may actually favor, but, in a way that we could then approve the policy as it currently stands with potentials for updates and changes so that the council can get what they want and move forward with something.
And the changes that agreed upon today.
Agreed,
by
yeah,
you.
yeah, of course,
I
of course.
don't think we can adopt it today because there are some things that need to be added and so forth.
But we can get there pretty quickly.
You
We
can
but
adopt
we
it
just need to-
as amended.
Yes.
Well, we need to see the amendments. I mean, we talked about a lot of things in theory, but we need to see the actual.
I mean, we do have a meeting in
But I
2
don't-
weeks, so.
Yeah, I don't think it'll take long.
I mean, in
So-
2 weeks, we can do that.
Right, but we have a planning board, the hope was to go to planning board on the 12th. Is that
That's what I was told,
Yeah, to go to planning board on the 12th for recommendation to the council. Council has another meeting on the 20-something of this, 27th of this month. No board meeting in July,
Yeah, yeah.
which means that if nothing happens, then the next time we come together to vote on this policy would be August.
I mean, that's unfortunate, but I don't. I mean, we've been asking for a while to be able to have the meeting that we're having today.
Yeah.
And now I'm feeling like, almost everybody in the room came up with something that they questioned or we needed to rework or add additional language. I don't feel comfortable passing something until all that language is established. And
Yeah,
I kind of feel like I'm
I
being
agree with you. I agree.
boxed into a corner to approve it because it works with everything else versus what this board feels like is right.
So do we actually need, at the end of this meeting, a list of those things that are gonna be changed in here?
I don't need a list. I just want to see the updated document with those changes highlighted. I mean,
Before you say, before you vote, before the
Yeah.
members vote.
Yeah, because words matter and, you know, we want to see what the final product looks like.
I mean, what at the planning board level, I'm just asking a question because I don't know how the process works. So the planning board is to approve what we approve because it votes, so, because it affects our zoning, and then it goes to council. But my question is, is the planning board gonna make changes to that document? Likely, I mean, I guess they could in theory, but is there a reason that we can't, at the planning board meeting, we obviously get it before ours, right? Is my point. That we could say, hey, the planning board, we're bringing this to you now, knowing that there are these changes, whatever these changes are. We're asking you to approve it so that it can go to council. We have our meeting on the 16th. That gives us 2-3 weeks, almost 2.5 weeks, for Aaron to make the changes, or Aaron and Michael to make the changes, get them back to us within a week. Then we could vote at our meeting on the 16th, right? And would that be physically possible? I just don't know how the process works.
So they would need, whatever the markup that you all want to see on the 16th, the planning board needs to see that.
Yeah.
That would
Okay,
be, they would
that's
have
one
to
of my
see the
questions.
final version that
Right.
you're considering, because all they do is they either recommend approval or they'll recommend approval with like notes. Have you considered? They're not gonna sit there and talk about the individual numbers that y'all are
Correct.
talking about. That's not their background. They don't understand. My guess is they'll read it and they'll go, this is great. We support this. That's what my guess is they're gonna do. If anything, they'll have a note. We have a question about this. Based on what we've seen on the rezonings, have you thought about this? That's the only thing. So I don't think it's a bad thing to go to them before you all vote on it, because they might have something that you all want to consider. But they do need to see whatever that version is. Otherwise, when it goes to council, it's not the same version.
I don't have a problem with them seeing it as long as they understand we're still
Draft.
tweaking it.
Just say draft.
Yeah, that's essentially my point, right? Is if they could have a version that is marked up. Look at you like you're doing it.
Planning board job.
I know you're not.
Bring up.
I mean, I don't know if that's possible, but I'm just trying to make it where we can have both.
Right.
So it sounds like we need to ask Aaron, given
What do we
what
define?
we've gone
We
through
don't.
in the meeting today, how soon could you have a marked up version available?
June 16th.
No, that's just.
Okay, so you actually want to see.
Okay, I don't know if you knew.
That works.
Talking.
So your meeting's on a
Much on,
Friday.
right?
Yeah, it's no,
I'm
it's fine.
sorry. So Aaron, I was asking you the
Yeah.
question, given what we discussed in the meeting today, including the changes, importantly, the changes. How much time do you need to reflect those changes in a marked up copy of this document?
About 90 minutes. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 changes that you've mentioned.
Okay,
So
so you could send that out to us today?
Well, I will send it to Michael and Demetria after I make the changes for them to review to make sure that I captured everything in my notes, and then they can forward it to the HAB if I captured everything correctly.
Friday, right? I mean, just make it reasonable,
That's
right?
tomorrow.
So I know, but I'm just saying.
Well, I'll make the,
I know, but you said today, and that gives them an hour. I'm trying to get you to a close of business tomorrow.
24 hours.
I mean, like tomorrow, if you get it tomorrow and we get it Monday, I mean, surely that, I'm not gonna read it over the weekend, I can guarantee that. I mean, that surely would give us enough time,
Yeah.
as well as the planning board, right? To make.
Yeah,
this
the
whole
planning
thing
board
work.
agenda doesn't go out until early next week. And so they'll have it before their meeting on the 12th. And they're used to reviewing it over the weekend, so.
Again, I got no problem if they see a marked up version and say,
Draft.
you know, they can see that we're 98.7% there, you know.
I actually don't think it's a bad idea to have them see it in case they have a note for you.
Sure.
I actually think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I'll send it out in Word, so we can track changes on our side too, so you can see, instead of having to wait until we come here and have our PDFs. If I can convert it to Word, fine, but I gotta make sure it's easy for everybody.
Should be easy enough to track changes on Aaron's side.
As long as it has your name by it, so we know.
Like highlighted.
Yeah.
We're not gonna be, it's not gonna be on a cloud, so we're not gonna be doing it all at the same time. So
Yeah.
I'll send my
Yeah, right.
edits back, you know, if I mark up anything.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I'll make those changes after this meeting and send them. I have to Indiana Jones my way back to Ohio via multiple airports tomorrow. So I'm mostly out of pocket tomorrow, but I'll get everything done and sent out to Michael and Demetria today.
State from middle Nebraska.
Okay, and so we'll get it on Monday. And then when do we need to get comments back to? Like by Friday? The 9th? Because the planning board meets that Monday.
Well, that's too late.
That's too late.
I think
Okay,
that's too late because we don't want to go into the weekend trying to pull together
okay.
comments. So as you finish your comments, send them in, please.
Well,
So-
I mean, can't the planning board see it knowing that it's that we're still tweaking, but that's pretty close? I mean, it sounds like they're not gonna get into the weeds anyway.
Well, we'll have Aaron's changes, and I think that's what we're really focusing on, Aaron's changes, not if, because I think what you've asked for today, Aaron's already making those changes, so how much more can you add?
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying that, I mean, we've got, barely got a quorum here today. There's certain members of this board that have not been benefited this. And, I don't know, I was under the impression that we could present it to the planning board and say, here it is, and there's still some parts are tweaking, but this is pretty much it.
Yeah.
Is that not cool?
I
Yeah,
think
because
that's what you said.
then planning board can make whatever comments
Yeah,
they
yeah.
want about
Yeah.
it, which we could have at our next meeting.
Yeah.
And then address whatever, if they do happen to have comments or any further changes.
Yeah.
So then it should be ready for a up or down.
So does this group need to meet to answer the questions that come from the planning board or?
That would
We will
Well,
need a regular meeting.
We can just, fold that into our next meeting.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Put that in the minutes. That's it.
So the question about your all's individual comments on the draft that Aaron's gonna have done, the planning board doesn't need to see whatever else y'all are.
No.
That just
That's
needs
what-
to be,
that's what-
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you all want a date for the next meeting that you would like it before the 9th, because the meeting's the next Friday is what I heard.
Mhm.
So
16th, which meeting? This meeting?
this meeting on the 16th, the 9th is too late because is what I heard, but you want to give them a date? I would give them a date.
What's it too late for?
to do
Yeah,
your
I
review.
did say the 9th was too late, if we got it on Friday, because we're trying to get it ready for the 12th.
Not for the 12th. It's
Okay.
not for planning board, but you're trying to get ready for this group.
Right.
That's
Okay,
pretty much
got it.
what everyone else is.
I'm with you. I'm
So-
with
Too
you.
many meetings.
So I don't, whatever, however long you think you all need, I just think that they didn't hear a date and it would be good to have
Yeah.
them have a date so that we're not,
Right. That was what I was trying to get to.
Sure.
and it's not about the planning board. It's just
Yeah.
about the next HAB meeting. When would you like their last?
That case in by Friday the 9th,
Okay.
Okay.
in that case.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, perfect. That works.
it's Friday the 9th.
Yes.
And when does planning board need their version?
He's gonna give it to us tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's soon enough. We don't need to give another date.
Right. Give us time to review and get it.
Don't have to confuse it.
Okay.
Are we clear?
Make sure.
Page 5 and 6, like just 2 errors. Like literally says error, reference source not found.
Yeah.
Oh.
Just
Yeah, the link didn't convert and I didn't catch it.
on the
Yeah,
version.
yeah, that figured it's fine. Just wanted to point it out. So.
Yeah.
Just grab one.
We're on number dates.
I think so.
Okay. Do we need, I mean, especially since there are not people here, we need to send this schedule out to everyone on the
Mhm.
Housing Advisory Board?
Mhm.
Who's the appropriate person to do that? Michael, me, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out who does.
Say that. Say
Somebody
that.
needs to send out
email to the entire housing advisory board to say, we need your comments, your final comments by the 9th.
Here's the
That
new
way.
version from Aaron.
And
Comment.
Right, I think one email would suffice. Here's the new version. Please review it by such and such date. It's going, this version that's attached is going to planning board on the 12th. Send your comments by the 9th. We'll have our meeting on the 16th.
okay, so that sounds like something that might.
I can do that.
Perfect. Okay, good. I think we're good. Do I hear motion?
A motion to adjourn? Yes.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.